world stage, because we now have Dmitry Polyansky, Russian ambassador at the United Nations. Mr. Polyansky, thank you very much for joining us. Can I start by what seems to many people the kind of fundamental, very difficult, unanswered question about all of this? We know what a peace deal would look like from the Ukrainian side. They want to take all the territory back again. What would a peace deal, what would peace look like from the Kremlin or the Russian perspective?
Well, hi, Andrew. Actually, I think we made absolutely no secret from the very beginning, that we had to launch this special military operation to correct the situation when there is a hornet's nest at our border, which is endangering Russia, which is being a threat to Russia, and to stop this war that was declared by Kiev regime against residents of Donbass, and which lasted for 8 years. So that were the main two aims, and I don't think that the Ukrainian proposals...
I'm sorry to jump in. I'm sorry to jump in, but that is, as you know, it's a contested view of how the war started. I'm asking something slightly different. What would peace look like? What would the end to the war look like from your perspective?
I'm answering exactly what you're asking. So the peace will look like when there is no threat from Ukraine to Russia, and when there is no shellings, no attacks on Donbass from Ukraine. That were the basic starting points of our special military operation. Of course, we need to implement them. You know also about demilitarization, which is linked to the threats coming from Ukraine, because as we know now perfectly clear, Ukraine was being armed by Western countries for 8 years.
Yes,
and also
I'll come on to
denazification.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will come on to that. But just to be clear, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't see it happening at all. But if the Ukrainian army stopped firing, the Russians would stop firing and there would be an armistice or peace deal. Is that right?
Well, looks logical, but I'm not a military man. It's very difficult for me to understand the details. Of course, all the conflicts, they aim at the table of negotiations. And you know that we were ready for negotiations back in March. And I think that was United Kingdom and leastly United States who discouraged Ukrainian side to negotiate for peace. Now we have what we have.
We can talk more about that, but I started the programme by talking about this epic and very, very bloody and difficult battle going on for the tiny little Cossack town of Solidor. Do you have any information as to whether the Russians have taken Solidor, or is the battle still going on?
Well, according to the information that I have, according to the video footages that are now in abundance in Russian Telegram channels, I think there is no doubt about it that the city is under total control. Of course, there are pockets of resistance, and I think that it will be over very soon. But again, I'm not there. I'm not a military man. It's very difficult for me to give this account firsthand.
I accept you're not a military man, but can you explain why Solidor, this very, very small town with a big salt mine under it, why that has become the epicenter of such a very, very bloody battle?
I think it's because the Ukrainian army has constructed a very important fortification in Solidar, as well as in other regions of Donbass. And of course, it's not very easy to get them out of there. And in Solidar, you yourself tell that there are salt mines. It means that there are underground communications. So from military point of view, it's a very difficult part of territory to free, to liberate. But I think we are completing it.
You say we and you say Russian, but actually this battle has been fought largely by the Wagner group under Mr. Prigozhin. Why is Russia using this mercenary group rather than its own army?
I think we're using everybody. And again, there is a distribution of labor at the front, which is frankly none of my business. But of course, we have Wagner Group. Well, it's not. It's a legally normal body which is functioning in Russia, and there are mercenary groups. There are private military companies.
But you're using,
world, including the US and the UK.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're using freed prisoners people who were in prison are now being sent to the front and killed in very large numbers. Why are you doing that?
Well, I think it's up to the management of this private military company of whom they really engage and give work to fight. It's none of the business of state subjects.
Okay.
So I don't think it should be a reason for big concern for anybody else.
Let me ask you about a couple of things of big concern to the British public at the moment. There are two of our aid workers, and the reports that they have been killed. The Wagner Group says it's got one of the bodies. Do you have any information about their fate? And if somebody has been killed, will they be returned to the British authorities?
I also heard news sources. I think that there are channels of communications through which our former British partners can really get this kind of information, and they know these sources of these contact numbers. So I think they should really address.
So you've got no more information yourself. You have no more information yourself. Okay.
Nothing beyond what you already said.
Well, let me ask you about a lively discussion going on in London about whether to send Centurion tanks to help Ukraine. As you know, Germany, America, France are also thinking about sending tanks, Leopard tanks and Centurion tanks. What would the Russian reaction be to that?
Well, I think we already said that everything that is being delivered to Ukraine is becoming our absolutely legal target, and it will be destroyed and demolished, as all the other deliveries that were sent before. And of course, these kind of discussions, they are proving the fact that NATO is being more and more deeply involved in this crisis, well, this is a very dangerous situation. I wonder whether you heard what Minister of Defense Reznikov of Ukraine said today, that Ukraine is actually fulfilling and implementing the mission of NATO. And Ukraine is losing blood and NATO is not losing blood. And that's why the West should provide Ukraine with more weapons and money. So I think that's absolutely clear that we're fighting with NATO in Ukraine, and it's a proxy war.
If you regard this as a fight between Russia and NATO, what are the implications of that? Where does it lead?
Well, it's of course a very dangerous crossroad, and it's up to our colleagues in NATO to make calculations themselves. Of course, they should be aware of the fact that we're not fools. We're taking everything very seriously. We know that NATO is already providing a lot of armaments to Ukraine, not only arms, but satellite data, the intelligence data. There are also NATO mercenaries fighting there. So NATO is becoming more and more involved. And of course, you can understand all the risks of direct involvement in confrontation with the military power.
So what would you say?
So absolutely clear.
What would you say to Rishi Sunak if he was sitting here?
I would advise him to better think twice.
Think twice. Think twice or else what?
Well, again, he is becoming more and more involved in confrontation, almost direct confrontation with the military power. I think the stakes are very high. I don't need to speculate more on this.
All right. If things are going so well, can you explain why President Putin has demoted Sergei Surovikin from leading the army and has put in Mr. Gerasimov again? Why has he made that change? Because it reverses a change he made not many months ago.
Actually, I don't see any problems there. First of all, I need to say that it's none of my business. It's really something that is going on within the Ministry of Defense. Secondly, I think that this is a normal thing when the command structure of special military operation is being reinforced, and we view it this way. I wouldn't speculate on whether this is due to certain bad outcomes or good outcomes. I think that's normal routine in any army. And
in general, if I can say so, if a war is going well, you don't tend to sack the commander-in-chief.
I don't think he's sacked, by the way. I think he's left there.
Demoted.
But again, it's very difficult for me to analyze the decisions of Ministry of Defense. I'm a diplomat, not a soldier.
Earlier in the conflict, you will recall there was a lot of conversation about the possibility of a nuclear response by Russia using tactical nuclear weapons. That hasn't been talked about now for months. Has that threat gone away?
I think we have already denied repeatedly such plans. I think that these plans, where this theory was floated by Ukraine, specifically to make NATO partners to send more weapons to fight Russia. We denied it at all the levels, including President Putin's level.
I started off by talking about the possibilities of peace. Do you yourself see any possibility in the next few years of a genuine peace agreement between Russia and the West? Do you see this war as something that's going to go on for years, perhaps decades now?
Well, relations between Russia and the West are very troubled now, if there are any relations at all. And of course, there is a big lack of trust, which is the biggest problem. I don't know how we can believe in Western fairy tales anymore when there are revelations by Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Hollande about using Minsk agreements to arm Ukraine. This is absolutely breaking any trust, and it's very difficult to understand how we can sit and negotiate with this kind of leaders. If you add on top of this everything that was said, had been said to us on non-enlargement of NATO in the 90s and later, of course, this creates a very, very big bubble of lies, which we have to face when we negotiate with the West. There are a lot of things that we need to really reprocess in these negotiations.
I'm just returning to this much more local story of our two aid workers, who everybody is very concerned about. Their families may well be listening to this broadcast. I just wonder what your reaction is to the fact that people who have gone into a battlefield to try to get civilians out and bring civilians to safety might have been killed by your forces.
By the way, I really don't have much to say because I don't have first-hand information and I don't really engage in speculations. I heard that, for example, one of the bodies was found with full military ammunition, totally armed. I don't think that this is really something that aid workers are doing, but I don't want to imply that this is the real situation there. Again, there are channels of communication between countries. It's the choice of United Kingdom not to use these channels with Russia. So I think that the only way to learn anything about this would be to use these channels of communication. Otherwise, there will be mere speculations and problem for the relatives of these people. And I want to offer my condolences to them because any human life loss is a tragedy. And what's happening is a big, big tragedy. There wouldn't have been this war if United States, United Kingdom, and of allies were not conducting this kind of policy, and if they wouldn't have enacted this coup d'etat in Ukraine.
With respect, Mr. Polyansky, if other countries hadn't helped to arm Ukraine, you would probably have destroyed Ukraine by now, and it would cease to exist as an independent country.
There was never our aim. Nobody said that we wanted Ukraine to cease to exist. Our aims were just to ensure that human rights in this country would be respected in the way they are respected in other countries in the world. If French and Dutch speakers in Belgium are given same rights, why wouldn't Russian speakers be given same rights in Ukraine? Why would a new version of history with glorification of Nazi criminals be imposed on those who don't want to do it? Why would be people burnt alive in Odessa and other things? Why would be people shelled for 8 years with women and children being killed? This is a mere hypocrisy.
These are arguments that are going to go on for a very long time, but it's important to keep communication channels open, including this one. So, Mr. Polyansky, can I thank you very much indeed for talking to me tonight? Now then, coming up